My husband insisted his platonic best friend join our anniversary trip, then I found her lingerie in his bag and he called me crazy and insecure. God, even typing that title out makes my stomach churn. It feels like a punch to the gut all over again, a grim summary of how my world tilted on its axis and shattered. You think you know someone. You build a life, you trust, you love, and then one little piece of fabric, one satin strap, unravels everything. This isn't just about lingerie, though. It's about years of subtle manipulations, of being made to question my own sanity, all while the person I loved most was meticulously betraying me. Mark and I were supposed to be celebrating our 5th wedding anniversary. 5 years. It felt like a milestone. We'd been together for 8 years in total, high school sweethearts who'd actually made it. Or so I thought. We'd planned this trip for months. A secluded cabin in the mountains, a week of hiking, cozy fires, and just us, reconnecting. It was supposed to be romantic, special, ours. Then came Chloe. Chloe, Mark's best friend since college. They were, in his words, practically siblings. He'd always preface any mention of her with how she was like a sister to him, or how their bond was purely platonic, obviously. And for years, I tried to believe it. I really did. I wanted to be the cool, understanding wife. But there was always this little niggle, this tiny voice in the back of my head that whispered, something's not right here. Chloe was a lot. She was beautiful, in a very obvious Instagram model kind of way. Always perfectly made up, always dressed to impress, even for a casual hangout. She was loud, opinionated, and incredibly familiar with Mark. Too familiar. Inside jokes I wasn't privy to. Lingering touches that lasted just a second too long. A way of looking at him that made my skin crawl. Whenever I'd gently bring up my discomfort, maybe after she'd draped herself over him on the couch, jokingly, or made a comment about my cooking that felt more like a dig, Mark would shut it down. Babe, you're being sensitive. That's just Chloe. She doesn't mean anything by it. Or the classic, are you actually jealous of Chloe? That's ridiculous. She's my best friend. Sometimes he'd even add a little sigh, a look of disappointment, that made me feel small and petty. So I learned to swallow my concerns. I told myself I was the problem, that I was letting my insecurities get the better of me. He loved me, right? He chose me. About 2 weeks before our anniversary trip, Mark dropped the bomb. We were having dinner and he was being unusually cagey. So babe, he started, swirling his wine. I was thinking, Chloe's been having a really tough time lately. Work stress, a bad breakup, you know. And our cabin has that extra little loft bedroom. What would you think about her maybe tagging along? Just for a few days? To clear her head? I stared at him. My fork clattered onto my plate. You're kidding, right? His face fell. Oh, come on, Sarah, don't be like that. It's just Chloe. She'd be quiet. Keep to herself mostly. It would mean the world to her, and to me, to support her right now. It's our anniversary, yeah. But sharing a bit of our happiness with a friend in need? Isn't that a good thing? Mark, I said, trying to keep my voice even. This is our 5th anniversary. It's supposed to be a romantic getaway. For us. Not for us and your best friend who needs a life reset. Wow, he said, pulling back, a hurt expression settling on his features. I didn't think you'd be so territorial. She's practically family. I thought you liked Chloe. I don't dislike Chloe, I lied, or at least partially lied. What I disliked was her dynamic with him. But this is a very specific, very personal trip for us. Can't she find another time, another way to de-stress? Can't we help her when we get back? Then came the guilt trip, expertly deployed. He sighed heavily. Look, I get it. It's not ideal. But she's really down, Sarah. Like, legitimately struggling. I'm worried about her. And she was so excited when I even vaguely mentioned we were going to the mountains. Said it sounded like exactly what she needed. It would just be for the first 3 nights, then she'd head back. We'd still have half the week plus our actual anniversary day to ourselves. Please? For me? He looked at me with those puppy dog eyes that used to melt my heart. Now they just felt manipulative. I felt cornered. If I said no, I was the bitchy, jealous wife. If I said yes, I was sacrificing our special trip. The old patterns kicked in. Don't be difficult. He's just trying to be a good friend. Maybe I am overreacting. 3 nights, Max? I asked, already feeling a knot of resentment forming. Promise, he said, his face brightening instantly. You're the best, Sarah. Thank you. This will mean so much to her. He leaned over and kissed me, but it felt hollow. I didn't feel like the best. I felt like a doormat. The drive up to the cabin was tense, at least for me. Chloe sat in the back, chattering away to Mark, who was in the driver's seat. They reminisced about college pranks, old professors, parties I hadn't been to. I tried to join in, but I was mostly an outsider, a third wheel on my own anniversary. Preamble. Chloe, far from being quiet and keeping to herself, seemed to be in high spirits, already de-stressing by dominating the conversation and Mark's attention. The cabin was beautiful, just like in the pictures. Rustic charm, huge stone fireplace, a stunning view of the valley. For a moment, I thought, maybe this could still be okay. Maybe Mark was right, and I was just being paranoid. That hope died a quick death. The moment we got inside, Chloe was all over the place, exclaiming how adorable it was, how Mark knew her taste so well when he'd picked it, even though we picked it together. She immediately claimed the coziest armchair by the fire, the one I'd mentally earmarked for myself. Mark just chuckled. Classic Chloe. The first evening was excruciating. Mark and Chloe fell into their easy banter, their private language, of shared history. I tried to inject myself to talk about our plans for the week, but the conversation always seemed to boomerang back to them. Chloe would accidentally brush her hand against Mark's arm or lean in close to whisper, something that made him laugh. A laugh I hadn't heard in a while. At least not directed at me like that. I cooked dinner, our anniversary dinner essentially, since it was the first night, and Chloe offered to help by opening the wine and then proceeded to critique my chopping skills. "Oh, honey, you want to go finer than that for a mirepoix," she'd said with a dazzling, condescending smile. Mark, oblivious, or perhaps willfully ignorant, just said, "Chloe's a fantastic cook. You should get some tips." I spent most of that evening nursing a glass of wine, feeling like a ghost in my own relationship. When it was time for bed, I was actually relieved. Mark and I went to our master bedroom, and Chloe trailed off to the loft. "Night, guys. Thanks again, Marky. You're a lifesaver," she called out. Marky. She hadn't called him that in years, not since I'd once, very early on, mentioned it sounded a bit childish. "See? This isn't so bad, is it?" Mark said as he got into bed, already turning away from me to check his phone. "It's fine," I mumbled, but I knew he wasn't really listening. He was probably texting Chloe. My heart ached with a dull, persistent throb. The next day was more of the same. We went for a hike. Chloe, despite her supposed work stress, was an Energizer bunny, practically skipping up the trail, leaving me to trail behind with Mark, who seemed more interested in telling her stories about their past adventures than in holding my hand or enjoying the scenery with me. She wore ridiculously tight yoga pants and a sports bra, despite the chill in the air. Mark didn't seem to mind. That afternoon, while Chloe was supposedly napping in the loft, I could hear her on a loud, giggly phone call. Mark was in the shower. I was tidying up our bedroom, a habit I have even on vacation, trying to create some semblance of order in the chaos I felt internally. Mark's duffel bag was open on the floor, clothes spilling out. I bent down to push some of it back in, maybe grab his dirty laundry to start a load later if the cabin had a machine. And there it was. Tucked beneath a couple of his t-shirts, almost hidden, was a flash of black lace and red satin. It wasn't a bra I recognized. It definitely wasn't mine. My lingerie tends towards comfortable cotton or soft silks, mostly in muted colors. This was aggressive. A thong and a matching push-up bra with intricate straps. Expensive looking. Chloe's size, I'd bet. My stomach dropped. It felt like the floor had just vanished from beneath me. I picked it up. My hands were trembling. The fabric felt alien, illicit. This wasn't an accidental packing mistake. This wasn't something that could be easily explained away. This was deliberate. This was a betrayal. My mind raced. Why was it in his bag? Had she asked him to pack it for her? That made no sense. Had he bought it for her? The thought was sickening. Or had it been worn? Was it there because they were? I couldn't even finish the thought. A wave of nausea hit me. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, the lingerie clutched in my fist. The sounds from the shower stopped. Mark would be out any second. He walked into the bedroom, a towel around his waist, whistling. He stopped short when he saw my face. Then his eyes darted to what I was holding. For a split second, I saw something flicker across his face. Panic? Guilt? But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a carefully constructed look of confusion. "What's wrong?" "Babe? What's that?" he asked, his voice deceptively casual. I stood up, my whole body shaking. I held out the lingerie. "What the hell is this, Mark, and why is it in your bag?" He frowned, stepping closer. "What are you talking about? I've never seen that before in my life." He reached for it, but I pulled it back. "Don't lie to me, Mark. This isn't mine. I found it in your bag. Whose is it?" My voice was rising, cracking with a mixture of disbelief and rage. And then the performance began, the one I now recognize as his go-to manipulation tactic. He scoffed, actually scoffed. "Are you serious right now, Sarah? You found some random lingerie, probably something left behind by previous cabin renters or God knows what, and you're accusing me of something? What? That I'm having an affair? With who? It was in your bag, Mark. Not under the bed, not in a drawer. In your duffel bag, under your clothes." He ran a hand through his wet hair, looking exasperated. "Okay, so maybe Chloe asked me to stick something in my bag because hers was full? I don't know, I don't remember every little thing. She packs a lot. Is that what this is about? You're freaking out over a piece of clothing? This isn't just a piece of clothing, Mark. This is lingerie. And why would Chloe pack her lingerie in your bag? Does that sound normal to you?" Then came the escalation. His voice got louder, angrier. "You know what, Sarah? This is exactly what I'm talking about. Your insecurity. You're always looking for something, always suspecting the worst. I try to be a good friend to Chloe, someone who's going through a hard time, and you immediately jump to these insane conclusions. You're making this entire trip, our anniversary trip, miserable because you can't handle me having a female friend. This isn't about you having a female friend, I yelled back, tears stinging my eyes. This is about finding another woman's underwear in my husband's luggage on our anniversary trip that she wasn't even supposed to be on. How am I supposed to react to that, Mark? Am I supposed to say, oh, silly me, of course that makes perfect sense? You're being crazy, Sarah. Absolutely crazy, he threw his hands up. I don't know how that got there. Maybe it got mixed up in the laundry at her place before we left. Maybe she dropped it and I picked it up without looking. There are a million explanations that don't involve me cheating on you. But you always go to the darkest possible place, don't you? You always think I'm out to get you or betray you. He was shouting now. You're so damn insecure you can't see straight. You're probably thrilled you found this, aren't you? Gives you something to be hysterical about. Hysterical, crazy, insecure. The words hit me like slaps. He wasn't defending himself, he was attacking me. He wasn't trying to explain, he was trying to make me doubt my own eyes, my own gut feeling. Gaslighting 101, and I was enrolled in the masterclass. Just then, as if on cue, Chloe appeared at the bedroom door, looking artfully disheveled from her nap. Hey, is everything okay? I heard shouting, she said, her voice all innocent concern. Her eyes flicked to the lingerie in my hand, then to Mark, then back to me. A tiny, almost imperceptible smirk played on her lips before she smoothed her expression into one of worry. Everything's just fine, Chloe, Mark snapped, not looking at her. He glared at me. My wife is just having one of her moments, accusing me of cheating because she found something that probably belongs to the cleaning lady. The cleaning lady. The sheer audacity. Oh, Sarah, no, Chloe said, stepping into the room, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Mark would never... he talks about you all the time. He adores you. She even reached out and put a comforting hand on my arm. I flinched away like I'd been burned. Don't touch me, I hissed. I looked from her sanctimonious face to Mark's furious one. They were a united front, and I was the crazy one. I can't do this, I said, my voice hoarse. I can't. Be here. I threw the lingerie onto the bed. You figure out whose it is and what it was doing in your bag. I'm going for a walk. Sarah, don't be dramatic, Mark called after me, but I was already grabbing my jacket and keys, storming out of the cabin, out into the cold mountain air, tears finally streaming down my face. Crazy? Insecure? Maybe I was, or maybe my husband and his platonic best friend were lying, manipulative cheats, and I'd just stumbled upon their dirty little secret. My walk was more of a frantic escape. I just needed to breathe air that wasn't thick with their lies and accusations. The mountain air was crisp and cold, and it did little to cool the inferno raging inside me. Every word Mark had hurled at me echoed in my head. Crazy, insecure, hysterical, dramatic. He'd successfully flipped the script, turning my discovery into my failing. And Chloe, with her faux concern and that fleeting smirk, she was his co-star in this disgusting play. I walked for what felt like hours, replaying the scene, replaying years of similar, smaller incidents. The times Mark had a late work dinner that Chloe had also, coincidentally, been at. The way he'd guard his phone sometimes. The little gifts he'd buy her that seemed just a tad too personal. All those red flags I'd dismissed, I'd explained away, I'd let him convince me, were just figments of my insecurity. Now they weren't just flags. They were giant, flashing billboards screaming, affair. The lingerie wasn't from a previous renter. It wasn't from the cleaning lady. It hadn't accidentally fallen into his bag. Those were the desperate, pathetic excuses of a guilty man. It was Chloe's, and it was in his bag for a reason. The most chilling part was how ready he was with the attack, how quickly he'd turned it on me. This wasn't the reaction of an innocent man bewildered by a strange discovery. This was the reaction of a practiced liar, someone who had his defenses, his gaslighting tactics, honed and ready. When I finally returned to the cabin, hours later, emotionally exhausted and chilled to the bone, the atmosphere was thick with a strained, artificial calm. Chloe was in the kitchen, humming as she made tea, acting as if nothing had happened. Mark was slumped on the sofa, staring into the unlit fireplace, the picture of brooding melodrama. Neither of them looked at me as I walked in. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. So, I said, my voice flat. Have you figured out your story yet? Mark looked up, his expression hardened. There's no story, Sarah. I told you I don't know where that thing came from. Chloe doesn't either. She said it's definitely not hers. Chloe chimed in from the kitchen, her voice syrupy sweet. No, definitely not my style, sweetie. Besides, why would I pack my unmentionables in Mark's bag? That's just silly. She chuckled lightly, a sound that grated on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. They were sticking to it. The united front. Deny, 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 and make Sarah the crazy one. Right, I said, a bitter laugh escaping me. Of course, my mistake. I must have imagined it. Or maybe I planted it there myself in some kind of subconscious attempt to sabotage my own anniversary. Is that the next theory? Don't be like that, Sarah, Mark said, his voice weary, as if I were the one exhausting him. Can we just try to move past this? For the trip? For us? Move past this? He wanted me to just sweep a major betrayal, because that's what it felt like, even if he was denying the specifics, under the rug so we could pretend to enjoy our ruined anniversary. The audacity was breathtaking. There is no us to salvage right now, Mark, I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to keep it steady. Not while you're lying to my face and insulting my intelligence. I looked at Chloe. And you. Your concern is touching. Really. Chloe just gave me a small, sad smile. I just hate to see you two fighting. You're usually so good together. The manipulation was so blatant, so condescending, it was almost comical. Almost. The rest of that day was a blur of unspoken accusations and icy tension. I couldn't bring myself to be in the same room as them for long. I took a book and retreated to the bedroom, but I couldn't focus. Every creak of the floorboards, every muffled laugh from the living room where Mark and Chloe were trying to give me space, which seemed to involve them watching a movie together and sharing a bowl of popcorn, felt like another twist of the knife. Chloe was supposed to leave the next morning. I counted down the minutes. I prayed for her departure as if it were a deliverance. But a sick feeling in my stomach told me her leaving wouldn't solve anything. The damage was done. The trust was shattered. That piece of lingerie was a symptom, not the disease itself. The disease was Mark's deceit, and possibly Chloe's complicity. The next morning, the three of us ate breakfast in near silence. It was awkward, to say the least. Chloe made a few attempts at light conversation, mostly directed at Mark, who responded in monosyllables. I just picked at my toast. When it was finally time for her to leave, Mark insisted on walking her to her car, which she'd conveniently driven up separately, in case she needed to dash back for a work emergency. They were gone for a strangely long time, 20 minutes, maybe more, just to walk to the car. I sat by the window, watching, my suspicion growing with every passing minute. What were they discussing? Getting their stories straight for the next phase of this horror show? When Mark finally came back in, he had a strange look on his face, a mixture of relief and something else. Guilt? Regret? It was hard to tell. She's gone, he announced as if I hadn't noticed. Good, I said flatly. We had 2.5 more days of our anniversary trip left. 2.5 days of misery. We barely spoke. The few times Mark tried to initiate a conversation, to act like things could go back to normal, I shut him down. I couldn't pretend. I couldn't make small talk when my world felt like it was caving in. He accused me of punishing him, of holding a grudge over nothing. He just didn't get it, or refused to. The lingerie was the catalyst, the physical proof that my gut had been screaming about for years. But his reaction, the gaslighting, the denial, that was the mortal wound. Our actual anniversary day was the bleakest. He'd bought me a necklace, a delicate silver chain with a small sapphire pendant, my birthstone, a thoughtful gift in any other circumstance. He presented it to me with a hesitant, hopeful look. Happy anniversary, Sarah. I just stared at it. Thank you, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I didn't put it on. How could I? It felt tainted, like everything else. He deflated. Aren't you even going to try, Sarah? For one day? For our anniversary? Try what, Mark? I asked. Try? To pretend that I didn't find another woman's underwear in your bag? Try to pretend you didn't call me crazy and insecure for being upset about it? What exactly am I supposed to be trying to do? He sighed, running his hands through his hair in that frustrated way he had. I said I don't know how it got there. Why can't you just believe me? Because it's not believable, Mark, I finally snapped. And because for years, every time I've had a concern about you and Chloe, you've told me I'm insecure. I'm jealous, I'm imagining things. I'm done being told I'm crazy. Something is wrong here and you're not telling me the truth. He didn't have an answer for that. He just looked away, his jaw tight. We spent our 5th wedding anniversary in bitter silence. 2 strangers sharing a cabin filled with unspoken words and broken trust. It was the longest, most miserable few days of my life. The moment we could pack up and leave, I was practically sprinting for the car. The drive home was silent. Utterly, painfully silent. Mark tried once or twice to put on some music, but I asked him to turn it off. I needed the quiet to think, though my thoughts were a maelstrom of anger, hurt, and confusion. When we got back to our house, house, the place that was supposed to be our sanctuary, it felt alien, tainted. I couldn't shake the feeling that Chloe had been there too, that her presence had permeated every corner of our life, not just our anniversary trip. The first thing I did was go online. I needed answers. I needed proof that I wasn't crazy. Mark had always been careless with his tech, or maybe just arrogant, thinking I'd never look. I knew his passwords. I'd never felt the need to snoop before, truly. I'd always told myself that if you have to snoop, the trust is already gone. Well, the trust was vaporized, so what did I have to lose? I started with his social media. Chloe's profile was, of course, filled with pictures of her and Mark. Bestie adventures. Couldn't do life without this guy. My rock. All seemingly innocent, but now, viewed through the lens of the lingerie and the gaslighting, they felt like a brazen catalog of their inappropriate closeness. There were pictures from work trips he'd taken, conferences in other cities. And there was Chloe, in photos from the same cities, around the same dates, tagged in different locations, but clearly there. Coincidence? My gut screamed no. Then, I checked his email. Nothing too incriminating there, mostly work stuff, spam. But then I remembered he had a secondary email address, one he rarely used, or so I thought. I managed to guess the password for that too. It was related to one of their ancient inside jokes. And there it was. Pay dirt. Or rather, dirt. There were emails between him and Chloe going back years. Not just a few, but hundreds. And they weren't platonic, not even close. They were filled with flirtatious banter, sexual innuendos, and then, as I scrolled further back, outright declarations of something. Can't wait to see you. Miss your touch. Last night was amazing. There were hotel confirmations, booked under his name, for 2 people, in cities he'd supposedly visited alone for work. There were e-tickets for concerts and events I'd known nothing about. Events Chloe had also posted about attending with a friend. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a recent fling. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a long-term, calculated affair. They had been together, in some capacity, for years, possibly even before we got married. The sheer depth of the deception was staggering. All those times he'd called me insecure, jealous, crazy. He'd been actively sleeping with her. He'd been gaslighting me to cover his tracks, to make the problem so I'd stop looking too closely. And the anniversary trip. Inviting Chloe wasn't an act of compassion for a struggling friend. It was an act of brazen arrogance, a way for them to be together, probably even to mock me right under my nose on our anniversary. The lingerie in his bag? It wasn't an accident. It was part of their plan. Maybe she'd forgotten it there for him. Maybe it was a souvenir from one of their trysts. The possibilities were all horrifying. I felt sick, physically ill. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. All the love I'd felt for Mark, all the trust, all the shared history. It curdled into a toxic sludge of betrayal and disgust. I spent the rest of that day gathering evidence. Screenshots of emails, social media posts, booking confirmations. I saved everything to a USB drive. I needed to be systematic. I needed to be prepared. Because there was no going back from this. There was no moving past this. This was the end. When Mark came home from work that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table, the USB drive in front of me. I was eerily calm. The storm of emotion had passed, leaving behind a cold, hard resolve. We need to talk, I said. My voice was low, steady. He looked at me, then at the USB drive. He must have sensed the shift in me. The hysteria was gone. The tears were gone. What's that? He asked, his voice wary. That, I said, tapping the drive, is proof that you're a liar and a cheat, and that I'm not crazy or insecure or hysterical. I'm just a woman who finally has the undeniable truth. I laid it all out for him. The emails, the hotel bookings, the timeline of their affair that stretched back years. I watched his face as the carefully constructed facade of the innocent, misunderstood husband crumbled. The color drained from his cheeks. The anger, the bluster, it all deflated, replaced by a look of, dare I say it, fear. He tried to interrupt, to deny, to explain away, but I cut him off each time. No, Mark. No more lies. No more gaslighting. I have it all here. In black and white. You and Chloe. For years. When I was done, there was a long silence. He just stared at the table, unable to meet my eyes. Finally, he whispered, Sarah, I don't know what to say. Oh, I think you do, I said. You could try saying, I'm sorry, Sarah, for betraying you, for lying to you for years, for making you doubt your own sanity, for ruining our marriage, for sleeping with my best friend behind your back, for inviting her on our anniversary trip and then calling me crazy when I found her damn underwear in your bag. That might be a good start. He looked up then, his eyes filled with tears. Actual tears. Were they tears of remorse or tears of being caught? I suspected the latter. I am sorry, he choked out. I'm so sorry. It just happened. It got out of control. I never meant to hurt you. Never meant to hurt me? I scoffed. You meticulously planned a double life, Mark. You had an ongoing affair for years. You looked me in the eye day after day and lied. You let me believe I was the problem. How is any of that not meaning to hurt me? Then came the pathetic excuses. Chloe and I, we have this connection. It was like a pull. I was weak. I didn't know how to stop it. I still loved you, Sarah. I do love you. Don't you dare say you love me, I said, my voice dangerously low. You don't know the first thing about love. Love is respect. Love is honesty. Love is loyalty. You've shown me none of those things. You've shown me contempt. He started to cry, to plead. He talked about making it right, about therapy, about cutting Chloe out of his life for good. He said all the things a desperate, cornered man would say. But it was too little, too late. The words were meaningless. The trust was gone, pulverized into dust. It's over, Mark, I said, the words feeling strangely liberating. I want a divorce. And I want you out of this house. Tonight. His head snapped up. Tonight? Sarah, be reasonable. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, Mark, I said, mirroring his earlier dismissive tone when I was distressed. Maybe Chloe has a spare room. You two seem to be very good at sharing spaces. The fight that ensued was ugly. He begged, he threatened, subtly about finances, about making things difficult. He tried to guilt-trip me again. After all we've been through, you'd just throw it all away? But I stood firm. The evidence I had was a shield. My newfound clarity was my armor. I wasn't the crazy, insecure wife anymore. I was a woman who knew her worth, a woman who had been profoundly wronged, and a woman who was done. He eventually packed a bag, still trying to argue, still trying to make me change my mind. As he stood at the door, bag in hand, he looked at me, his face a mess of tears and desperation. You'll regret this, Sarah. No, Mark, I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. The only thing I regret is not trusting my gut sooner. The only thing I regret is believing you for all those years when you told me I was the problem. Then I closed the door on him, and on that chapter of my life. The silence in the house was profound. But this time, it wasn't a heavy, suffocating silence. It was the silence of space. The silence of a storm that had finally broken. I was alone, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel crazy. I felt free, and I knew with absolute certainty that the fight for my own sanity and happiness had just begun. Update. It's been about 3 months since D-Day, Discovery Day as I've morbidly started calling it. The night I kicked Mark out was just the beginning of the roller coaster, let me tell you. You think the main explosion is the worst part, but the fallout, the emotional shrapnel, that's a whole other level of hell. So, Mark did end up at Chloe's. Shocking, I know. According to mutual acquaintances, because yes, word travels fast when your life implodes this spectacularly, he basically moved straight in with her. So much for his tearful, "I'll cut her out of my life, I promise," plea. They weren't even subtle about it. Within a week, Chloe was posting smug couple selfies on Instagram. Her new beginnings, Chaka true love prevails, Sha happiness found. The sheer audacity nearly made me throw my phone across the room. Prevails over what, Chloe? My marriage that you helped torpedo? The level of delusion was, and still is, astounding. The first few weeks were a legal and emotional battlefield. I lawyered up immediately. My lawyer, bless her pragmatic heart, is a shark named Brenda. She took one look at my USB drive full of evidence and practically licked her lips. Mark, predictably, tried to play the victim with his own lawyer, claiming I was being unreasonable, that I'd thrown him out with nowhere to go, conveniently forgetting Chloe's open arms and well, everything. He tried to argue for reconciliation, for marital counseling. Brenda shut that down so fast his head must have spun. Your client defines irreconcilable differences by systematically deceiving and emotionally abusing my client for years while conducting an affair. Counseling is not on the table. Asset division is. The friends and family situation has been illuminating. My parents and my sister have been rocks. They were furious on my behalf, especially after I laid out the full extent of Mark's gaslighting. My mom, who always had a slightly off vibe about Chloe, just kept saying, I knew that girl was trouble. Some of our mutual friends were incredible, rallying around me, offering support, wine, and an endless supply of he's a scumbag affirmations. Others, however, were a disappointment. A few of Mark's buddies tried the boys will be boys angle, or hinted that maybe I'd pushed him away with my suspicions. Yeah, my suspicions that turned out to be 100% accurate. Those people got cut out of my life real quick. And then there were the enablers, the ones who clearly knew something was up with Mark and Chloe but never said a word. Their awkward silences and shifty eyes now make perfect sense. Good riddance to them, too. One of the hardest parts was dealing with Mark's parents. They initially called me horrified, saying Mark had told them I had an affair and was trying to frame him. The mental gymnastics. I calmly emailed them a small, curated selection of the evidence, a few key emails, a hotel booking. The phone call I got from his mother after that was very different. Apologies, tears, shame. They're caught in the middle, loving their son but disgusted by his actions. I feel for them, genuinely. But my priority has to be me. Mark and Chloe, meanwhile, seem to be living in their own little bubble of narcissistic bliss, or so they project. They've been flaunting their relationship all over town, going to our old haunts, almost daring me to see them. It's like they need an audience for their grand love story. Pathetic, really. I've had to block them on all social media, not because I can't handle it, but because I don't need their toxicity polluting my healing space. The house became a battleground for a while. He tried to argue that he should be able to move back in, or that we should sell it immediately and split the proceeds. even though a good chunk of the down payment came from my inheritance. Brenda put a swift end to that. We're in the process of me buying him out of his share, which is financially painful but emotionally necessary. I refuse to be driven out of my own home by his betrayal. Reclaiming this space, piece by piece, is part of my healing. I've already repainted the bedroom. No more reminders. Financially, this has been a wake-up call. It turns out Mark wasn't just cheating emotionally and physically. There was a financial component too. Those work trips with Chloe, those hotel rooms, dinners, concert tickets. Guess who was funding a significant portion of that? Our joint account. He'd been siphoning off money for their escapades for years, justifying it as business expenses or vague entertainment. Brenda is having a field day with that, let me tell you. The forensic accountant found quite a bit. So, his tearful pleas about having nowhere to go and no money? Bull. He chose to spend our money on his affair. Emotionally, I'm a work in progress. Some days I feel strong, empowered, like I've dodged a massive bullet. Other days, the grief hits me like a tidal wave, not for Mark as he is, but for the Mark I thought he was, for the future I thought we had. The betrayal by someone I trusted so implicitly, for so long, that's a deep wound. Therapy is helping, immensely. Just having someone validate that I'm not crazy, that his behavior was classic emotional abuse and gaslighting, has been incredibly healing. I'm slowly rediscovering who Sarah is without Mark. I'm reconnecting with old friends he subtly pushed away, pursuing hobbies I'd let slide. It's like waking up from a long, foggy dream. The air is clearer, but also colder. Still, I'd rather face a cold truth than live in a warm lie. The lingerie that started it all? I still have it, tucked away in a box with all the other evidence. Sometimes I look at it and I don't feel crazy or insecure. I feel a cold, hard anger, yes, but also a strange sense of gratitude. That tacky piece of fabric was the catalyst that blew up my life, but it also set me free. Mark and Chloe think they won. They think they're living their happily ever after. But I'm starting to think the real victory will be mine when I build a life that's truly, authentically happy without him. The journey is long, but I'm walking it, one step at a time. Update 2. It's been a little over a year now since D-Day, a full year. Sometimes it feels like a decade. Other times like it was just yesterday I was standing in that cabin, heart-shattered, being called crazy. The divorce was finalized about 6 months ago. Let me tell you, signing those papers was one of the most liberating moments of my life. Brenda, my lawyer goddess, was magnificent. Thanks to the mountain of evidence and the forensic accountants' findings on his financial infidelity, the settlement was favorable. Very favorable. He had to pay back a significant amount of what he'd siphoned from our joint accounts for his romantic escapades with Chloe. Plus, I got the house, buying him out at a rate that reflected his, let's say, contributions to its depreciation. In value, metaphorically speaking, of course. Mark, or as I now privately call him, he who must not be trusted, did not take this well. There were angry voicemails, which Brenda advised me to save. Attempts to paint himself as the destitute victim to anyone who would listen. Apparently, having to actually pay for his choices was a novel and unpleasant experience for him. Chloe, too, was reportedly furious about the financial hit. I guess their "Nag her true love prevails" narrative didn't account for alimony and asset division. And speaking of Mark and Chloe, oh Reddit, you won't believe the delicious karmic updates I've been getting. Through the grapevine, of course. I maintain strict no contact. Their fairy tale romance? It seems to have hit a few snags now that the thrill of the forbidden affair is gone, and they're just a regular, albeit deeply dysfunctional couple. Apparently, being an openly official couple isn't as exciting as sneaking around. The drama they thrived on is gone, replaced by the mundane realities of bills, chores, and from what I hear, a lot of arguments. A mutual acquaintance, one of the few who managed to stay neutral-ish, and now mostly just feel sorry for the man. Mark told me that Chloe is finding Mark less attentive now that he's won her. Surprise, surprise. A man who built a relationship on lies and deceit isn't exactly prime long-term partner material. Who knew? Spoiler, I did, eventually. Chloe, from what I gather, also didn't appreciate the downgrade in lifestyle. Mark, without access to my income and our joint savings to pad his entertainment budget, can't wine and dine her quite like he used to. The fancy dinners and spontaneous weekend getaways are fewer and farther between. Rumor has it she's made several pointed comments about him needing to step up and provide the lifestyle she deserves. The irony is so thick you could spread it on toast. She helped him destroy his finances, and now she's complaining about the consequences. There was also a rather public incident a few months ago. They were at a local restaurant, one of our old favorites naturally, and apparently got into a loud argument. Someone I know overheard parts of it. Chloe was accusing Mark of still being hung up on Sarah, because he apparently, in a moment of drunken stupidity, mentioned something about missing the house or our old life. Not me, God forbid, just the comfortable setup. Mark then accused Chloe of being demanding and never satisfied. It ended with Chloe storming out, and Mark being left with the bill. Poetic justice, wouldn't you say? Their social media presence has also changed. The initial flurry of smug couple photos has dwindled. Chloe still posts her usual influencer wannabe content, but Mark features less and less. When he does, he often looks tired, strained. The triumphant gleam he had in those early post-D-Day photos is gone. Good. As for me, life is surprisingly good. Actually, scratch that. It's genuinely good. After the divorce, I threw myself into rebuilding. I sold the big house. Too many ghosts, even after the repaint. I bought a smaller, charming little place in a different neighborhood, all mine. I've decorated it exactly how I want, filled it with things that make me happy. It's my sanctuary. I got a promotion at work. Turns out, when you're not constantly expending emotional energy trying to decipher if your spouse is lying to you or trying to make you feel crazy, you have a lot more focus for your career. I've reconnected with so many wonderful people, friends I'd lost touch with during the Mark era. I'm taking pottery classes, something I'd always wanted to do. My lopsided bowls are a testament to my new, imperfectly perfect life. I even started dating again. Very casually, very slowly, no pressure. My bullshit detector is now finely tuned, military grade. I'm not looking for a replacement for Mark. I'm looking for a partner. Someone who values honesty and respect as much as I now do. It's refreshing to meet men who can have a conversation without their eyes darting around, who don't try to subtly undermine your confidence. The biggest change, though, is internal. I trust myself again. I listen to my gut. That little voice I ignored for so long, it's now my trusted advisor. I'm no longer afraid of being too sensitive or insecure. My sensitivity is a strength. My desire for security in a relationship is valid. Mark didn't break me. He inadvertently forged me into someone stronger, someone more resilient. I still have moments of anger, of sadness for the years I lost to his deceit, but they're fleeting now. They don't consume me. Mostly, when I think of Mark and Chloe, I feel a kind of detached pity. They built their relationship on a rotten foundation, and it seems the cracks are already showing. They deserve each other. Someone recently asked me if I felt like I won. It's a strange question. This wasn't a game. This was my life. But if winning means escaping a toxic, abusive marriage, rediscovering my self-worth, building a life I love on my own terms, and watching the architects of my misery hoist themselves by their own petard, then yeah, maybe I did win. And it feels pretty damn good. I learned that sometimes the most beautiful new beginnings come after the most devastating endings. And that lingerie, it's still in the box. A reminder not of betrayal, but of the moment I started fighting back. The moment I chose me. Final update. Well, Reddit, it's been nearly 2.5 years since that fateful anniversary trip. If you told me back then, when I was crying in that mountain cabin, that I'd be where I am today, I would have called you crazy. Life has a funny way of working out, even after it's been spectacularly blown apart. Let's get the Mark and Chloe saga update out of the way first, because I know that's the part everyone secretly, or not so secretly, waits for in these stories. Their epic love story officially imploded about 8 months ago. And it did so in a gloriously messy public fashion that even I couldn't have scripted better. Remember how Chloe was getting antsy about Mark's financial situation and his lack of attentiveness? Well, it turns out Chloe doesn't do for richer, or poorer, in sickness and in health, when the poorer and sickness, of the relationship that is, parts actually materialize. She started spending more and more time out with her girlfriends. A new set, since many of her old ones, who were also sort of my friends, had quietly distanced themselves after the affair became public knowledge. The final nail in their coffin, from what I heard from multiple reliable sources, small town, you know, was when Mark found out Chloe was cheating on him. Yes, you read that right. Chloe the homewrecker got herself a side piece. The hypocrisy is almost beautiful in its perfection. Apparently, she'd been seeing some gym bro for a few months. Mark, in a fit of what I can only imagine was a stunning lack of self-awareness, reportedly lost his mind, accusing her of betrayal, of destroying what they had, of being a liar. Oh, the irony. It's like watching a snake eat its own tail. Their breakup was apparently explosive. Shouting matches overheard by neighbors, dramatic social media purges. Chloe deleted every photo of Mark. Mark deactivated his accounts for a while. Last I heard, Chloe moved in with the gym bro, who, rumor has it, has an even shorter attention span than she does. Mark had to find a small, rather depressing apartment on his own. He's apparently quite miserable. He's tried to reach out to some of our old mutual friends looking for sympathy, but most of them are wise to his manipulative ways now. He burned too many bridges. A few months ago, Mark actually had the audacity to try and contact me. He sent me a long, rambling email. It was a masterclass in self-pity and revisionist history. He talked about how he made a mistake, how Chloe wasn't who he thought she was. No kidding, Sherlock. How he missed what we had, and how maybe someday we could find our way back. He even said he realized now how special our connection was and that I was the only one who ever truly understood him. My blood pressure spiked reading it, not gonna lie. The sheer, unadulterated nerve of the man. After everything, after the years of gaslighting, The affair, the humiliation, the financial deceit, the pain he put me through. He thought he could just waltz back in with a few pathetic platitudes. I didn't dignify it with a direct response. Instead, I forwarded the email to Brenda, my lawyer, with a simple note. For your amusement, and just in case he tries any further contact, please reiterate the terms of our no-contact agreement if necessary. Brenda sent him a very polite, very firm cease and desist letter, reminding him that any further attempts to contact me would be considered harassment. Haven't heard a peep since. Good riddance. The idea of finding our way back is laughable. That path is a field of scorched earth, and I have no intention of ever setting foot on it again. As for me, I'm thriving, truly. My little house is my haven. My pottery skills are improving. I can now make bowls that are mostly symmetrical. My career is going great. I'm surrounded by genuine, loving friends and family who supported me through the darkest times. And there's someone new in my life. His name is Alex. We met through a mutual friend about a year ago. He's kind, funny, intelligent, and, most importantly, honest. He knows my story, the condensed version anyway, and he's never once made me feel insecure or questioned my perceptions. He communicates. He's respectful. He shows up. It's refreshingly normal. We're taking things slow, building a foundation of trust and friendship, and it feels right. It feels healthy. After Mark, I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to trust someone like that again, but Alex is showing me that good men, real partners, do exist. Looking back, that piece of lingerie in Mark's bag was a twisted sort of gift. It was the shock to the system I needed to wake up from the nightmare I was living. It forced me to confront the truth I'd been afraid to see. The journey since then has been painful, messy, and incredibly difficult at times, but it has also been empowering, transformative, and ultimately liberating. I learned that being called crazy or insecure by someone who is actively betraying you is a classic abuser tactic designed to silence you and make you doubt yourself. I learned that trusting your gut is paramount. I learned that you can rebuild your life from the ashes, stronger and more beautiful than before. I learned that true happiness comes from within, from knowing your own worth, not from external validation, from someone who doesn't deserve you. So, to anyone out there who might be in a similar situation, who feels that little niggle of doubt, who's being made to question their own sanity, trust yourself. You are not crazy. Your feelings are valid, and you deserve so much better. Don't let anyone dim your light or convince you that their darkness is your fault. I rarely think about Mark and Chloe anymore. They are a closed chapter, a cautionary tale. My focus is on my present, my future, on the love and joy I'm building for myself. And let me tell you, it's a pretty amazing view from here. Free, happy, and definitely not insecure.